Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT04 Great Legend and seeing all of what it has to offer, and as we get more and more sets, the amount of decks and diversity in the deck sets start to become more numerous, and today I'm going to be highlighting a really interesting red deck that is focused around the Hybrid Digimon and Ancient Greymon to just try to deal as much damage onto the opponent as possible. So, going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gigimon. So, Gigimon is just one of the better Digitama Red has at this time, just because his ability is more generic, where as long as the opponent has 5 or more cards in their trash, then this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP, which DP boosting is always pretty decent. And then the other Digitama of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Koromon, but this could be really whatever you feel like you want to incorporate. I just feel like for what the deck is trying to do, Koromon is definitely one of the better Digitama we have access to, just because his ability is a little bit more generic, and most of the time, these abilities are really only going to matter on the Mega level anyway. So Koromon just DP boosting our Megas as long as they have 4 or more Digivolution sources in them by 1000 is still just pretty decent. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Monodramon. So Monodramon is just that value-efficient vanilla card in the rookie slot, and that's all we're really looking to utilize the card for. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Flamemon. So Flamemon is pretty nice because he has this powerful on-play ability where we get to check the top 3 cards of our deck, add 1 Hybrid Digimon and 1 Red Tamer from among them into our hand, and then the rest go onto the bottom. So he is our classic digger for the deck, where he is just trying to look for hybrids and tamers, so that way we could utilize our hybrids and tamers as efficiently as possible. On top of the fact that he is also a hybrid Digimon himself. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agumon. So this is the promo Agumon, and this Agumon is really nice because he has this great inheritable ability that synergizes with the majority of our deck, where during your turn, if this Digimon's name contains Greymon, then this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP. So DP boosting is always great, especially if we're trying to hit over their security, and we need to hit specific numbers in order to beat up on their security safely and efficiently. Then this Agumon just giving the majority of our deck plus 2000 DP is pretty decent. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Agumon. So this Agumon is from the starter deck, and it's doing almost the exact same job as the promo Agumon. It's just the DP boost is only 1000 instead of 2000, but the trade-off is this is a lot easier to work with the vast majority of our deck with, just because we don't necessarily need to have the card be a Greymon in order to get the DP buff. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Greymon. So this Greymon is pretty nice for similar reasons why we're running Agumon and, well, Agumon, just because we're utilizing this card to DP boost our Digimon, so that way they could hit specific numbers and be able to clear the opponent's Digimon in the security. So the DP boost that this card is providing is only 2000 for no conditions or requirements, which is still pretty decent. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agunimon. So Agunimon is a hybrid Digimon, so he can be searched off of Flamemon and has all of the hybrid synergy that we're looking for out of the deck. And then on top of which he has this really unique ability where we could Digivolve this card from our hand on top of a Red Tamer as if that Red Tamer was a level 3. So this is really, really powerful because if the opponent just isn't really expecting an Agunimon to be able to attack for game as long as you have a Red Tamer out, then you could just Digivolve that Tamer into a Agunimon to be able to swing for game. And then, like I said before, he has all of the hybrid synergy that we're looking for out of the deck, making him definitely a really decent Digimon to be playing with. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Cordramon. So Cordramon is just the blocker of the deck, and I still think blockers are pretty important, thus why we're running him. Next, on to the Ultimates, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Aldamon. So Aldamon is pretty nice because of how powerful this card can be depending on how we stack him up. So he innately has the Security Attack Up 1 ability, so that means he's just by default going to be hitting for 2 security, which is pretty decent. And then what makes this card really, really powerful is his other ability where during your turn, while this Digimon has a hybrid Digimon or a red tamer in its Digivolution source, then it gets plus 4,000 DP. So this card, built correctly, can hit for very high numbers as a level 5, allowing you to aggress it very early on, and that's just really, really good because they might not be expecting you to be able to do that. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of WarGreymon. So WarGreymon is just a very fantastic Digimon for the deck just because of how much synergy this card has. So first, he's a Greymon, so we already have that Greymon synergy that we're looking for. And then on top of the Greymon synergy that we're looking for, he also has this really powerful main ability of Digiburst 2, where you can play a red or yellow tamer from your hand for free. So this is really, really powerful just because we do want to be able to play our Tamers as efficiently as possible. So the fact that WarGreymon just allows us to do that makes him definitely a very powerful card on top of his Greymon synergy. And then on top of all of that, he even has a really nice inheritable ability where when attacking, if we have a Tamer in play, then one of our opponent's Digimon gets minus 2,000 DP. So even though his inheritable ability won't end up mattering a whole lot, it still could matter depending on what you're playing against and how you're playing this card. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Metal Greymon. So this Metal Greymon's pretty nice because he has this great inheritable ability where when this Digimon is blocked, then we gain plus 3 memory. So this deck isn't necessarily the most memory efficient of decks, so being able to have some way to gain memory to make our plays that much more powerful is definitely something we really want to look for, especially if we are going to be pressuring the opponent so much and their security. They're definitely going to be incentivized to block, and then we'll gain the memory for them doing that. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of WarGreymon. So this WarGreymon is from BT01 and is just a pretty decent Digimon just because he has this great when Digivolving ability where this Digimon gets security attack plus 1 until the end of the turn. So usually, ideally, the turn you play him, you're going to Digivolve up into him, then you're going to swing and he's going to at least hit 2 security checks, and because of all of the DP boosts we have, he could definitely hit for really high numbers, so that makes it even easier to clear the opponent's security. And then what's really important about this card is his other ability, where during your turn, when this Digimon does a security check on an option card, then they don't get the security effect of that option card. So this could just help shut out their security because, one, we're hitting for pretty high numbers, so there's a high chance that we're going to be able to clear whatever's coming out of their security. And then if we aren't and we are afraid of checking an option card, then WarGreymon definitely takes a lot of that worry out just because they don't get that effect. So WarGreymon is just another very fantastic Digimon for this deck, and the big reason why we also consider wanting to run him is the fact that he has an evo cost of 3, making him a little bit more efficient than some of the other Greymons that we have. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of WarGreymon. So WarGreymon is another Greymon, so he has already all of that Greymon synergy, and then on top of which he has this really powerful when Digivolving ability of Digiburst 2, where we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 8,000 DP or less. So this is our big removal mega, where we're just utilizing this card for his removal ability, and then on top of which he is still a Greymon, so he gets all of the Greymon synergy. He has some naturally higher DP at the cost of a slightly less efficient evo cost. But the main intended use of this card is just to be able to delete one of the opponent's Digimon and utilize the fact that he's a Greymon. And then the last mega of the deck is going to be 3 copies of AncientGreymon. So AncientGreymon is kind of what the whole deck is centered around, and everything is in the deck to kind of just synergize and support this card. So what this card is doing is, first, yes, I do understand he does have an evo cost of 5, which is really, really high, but as a result of him having a very high evo cost, he has some naturally higher DP, so him baseline being 13,000 is just really, really powerful. On top of any boosts that we give him, allows him to clear the security very, very easily against the opponent. And then on top of that, he has 2 very big abilities. So his first ability is during your turn, for each Digimon in this card's Digivolution source that contains Greymon in its name or hybrid in its form, then this Digimon gets security attack plus 1. So a fully stacked AncientGreymon could basically hit for all of the opponent's security, and that's just really, really powerful to think about just because of how powerful his attack could end up being. And then on top of which, he has another really powerful ability of an on-delete ability, where you get to play one red level 4 or below hybrid Digimon from your hand for free. So you being able to play another Digimon off of his death is very, very powerful, just because he creates basically a sticky board presence, where getting rid of him might not actually get rid of a body, and you could then utilize the body after you swing for all of the opponent's security to close out the game with. So this is just really, really powerful of an ability and a really powerful card to have overall, and as such, that's why the deck is kind of just centered around him, just because of how good this card can be. Next, onto the options, I'm going to be running 2 copies of A Delicate Plan. So A Delicate Plan is really, really good just because it's basically copying this WarGreymon's other ability, where he can just turn options off in the opponent's security. And if we are planning on hitting a lot of the opponent's security all at once, especially with AncientGreymon, we definitely want to take the ability to have option cards out of the equation, and that's why A Delicate Plan is a pretty good card to run. And then on top of which, it also has a very nice security ability of being able to add itself back to our hand, so that way, even if it's checked in the security, we can figure out when we want to use this card. And then the last option card of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Gaia Force. So Gaia Force is just one of the best option cards that we have to run, just because of how good of a removal card this is, where for the cost of 8 memory, we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon, which is pretty good considering it doesn't have any restrictions or requirements, and its security ability being able to activate its main ability just makes it that much more efficient of a card to run. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only Tamer of the deck, which is going to be 3 copies of Marcus. So Marcus already is just acting as our memory fixing Tamer, so that way we could always be at 3 memory to be able to play our cards as efficiently as possible. But on top of that, he also has a really nice ability that synergizes very well with the deck, where when your Digimon with Greymon in its name attacks, we could suspend this Tamer to gain 1 memory. So again, we're not necessarily the most memory efficient of decks, so any way we could gain some additional memory is definitely really, really nice. So Marcus already being a memory fixing Tamer is already good, and then him just passively basically giving us a memory every single turn that we attack with a Greymon is just, again, really, really nice because it makes our plays that much more efficient. And then there's just so many other options and possibilities that you could think about utilizing in this style of deck, just because of how flexible this deck can be. So you could think about utilizing Gigimon if you just want another generic DP booster. If you want to gain some memory and be a little bit more aggressive, Biyomon is really good at fitting that role. Then if you want to play a little bit more into the Digiburst cards, then this Agumon is just really good at supporting Digiburst. If you want to run even more Digiburst to support the Agumon's inclusion, then you could think about running GeoGreymon as a pretty solid removal card for his ability of Digiburst. You could also think about running burninggreymon. Even though this Greymon won't have any of the normal Greymon synergies, it's still a hybrid Digimon and it still has all of the hybrid synergies, so you could utilize this card to Digivolve off of a red Tamer, and that's still already pretty good, and then on top of which he does DP boost himself by a lot. You could think about utilizing the Greymon from the starter deck just because the ability to just give security attack +1 to anything he digivolves into is really, really powerful, so it requires less investment on certain other cards and it increases the damage output on some other cards, so he's just another very fantastic Greymon that you could run in the deck because of that ability, and he's still a Greymon, so he still has all of that Greymon synergy. You could think about utilizing the Metal Greymon from BT01 just because we are not the most memory efficient of decks, and having his ability on attack to gain 3 memory is just very, very powerful. He's also still a Greymon, so we still have Greymon synergy. Even though we do have to give the memory back, just being able to gain the memory in the first place can make some of your plays very, very powerful. You could also think about running SkullGreymon, so this is another really powerful utility type card. It is also a Greymon, so it does work with all of our Greymon synergies, and the utility that we're looking to use with this card is his on-play ability to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with blockers, making it so that we could aggress onto their security that much easier. Then you could also think about utilizing BlitzGreymon because, well, he's, again, another Greymon, and then on top of which he is fulfilling that same role of that removal mega. So if you didn't want to run Victory, then Blitz is a great replacement or substitute for it, just because of his when Digivolving ability where we get to de-Digivolve 2 on one of the opponent's Digimon, and even though it's not like true removal, it's still just removing the threat off of the board, and they'll still have to try to build the Digimon that's left back up to be a threat. And sometimes that anti-tempo play could just be what you need. And on top of which, he does have the ability of piercing innately. So depending on how you build him, he could still be very, very powerful and very, very threatening on his own. If you feel like you just want to run another Greymon that has an Evo for 3 on the Mega level, you could think about running the Red Shine Greymon. And the Red Shine Greymon still fits on theme with the deck, not only just because he's a Greymon, but because of his ability where during your turn, when you have a red or yellow tamer that is suspended, then this Digimon gets security tech +1 until the end of the turn. So you still could use them in combination with Marcus to get those extra security checks, and you could throw in some other tamers like Sora to make sure that you could get even more security checks with some more DP boosting. Then, if you feel like you want to run level 7s, you have access to both of the Omnimons. Both of the Omnimons are really, really good, so there's no reason why you really shouldn't think about running them other than you just don't have access to the card. But like I said, both Omnimons are just very, very powerful and good level 7s to think about and utilize. Then if you want some other spicy options, you could think about running Gravity Crush, similar to why you would run the Metal Greymon from BT01. Gravity Crush is just really good at borrowing memory, so just being able to gain the 2 memory is really, really powerful because let's say your turn starts at 3 memory because of Marcus, then you could use Gravity Crush, Digivolve up into AncientGreymon, and then you could swing with AncientGreymon for all of the opponent's security, and that's just what makes playing a card like this really, really good, just because of how good gaining that extra memory can be. Unfortunately, you do have to give the memory back, but if the opponent dies, then there's no real downside to running the card anyway. And then if you want another option card to act as some solid removal, you could think about running Trident Revolver to also just help play your Tamers. So if you want to play even more Tamers and kind of go into like this Shine Greymon sub build into the deck, then Trident Revolver is definitely really good at helping you play your Tamers and get rid of a Digimon with 6,000 or less DP. And then its security effect activating its main effect is also still just very powerful. And then if you want another really decent support tamer for the deck, you could think about running Taikamiya. So if your goal is to just hit all of the opponent's security, then Taikamiya just ensures that you're able to do that on a lot of your other megas. So Taikamiya is just another very fantastic memory fixing tamer that has some decent support with the deck. And then if we look at some of the future cards, we could see that this style of deck still gets a lot of new tools and new cards to play around with to think about upgrading in the future. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, I'll have the deck list down in the description below, and down in the description below will also be my TCG Player affiliate link. So when you use that link to purchase cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will end up going to supporting me and the channel. And as always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.